Let's quickly go over the answers to yesterday's quiz as a way to learn how to read more carefully, understand questions better, and therefore do better on today's assignment. So, yesterday you were asked to read Atlantic crossings during the age of exploration. And you were asked 4 questions in your quiz. Here's question number 1. It read, read the selection from the first paragraph of the article. Read the selection from the first paragraph of the article. And so we had here the first paragraph of the article. For centuries, Europeans explored the world by sea. And here's that first section right here. The first looks like two sentences. For centuries, it says, Europeans explored the world by sea. They had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Progress was slow. So there you go. That's actually 3 sentences. And the question is, which sentence uses the word poor in the same way as used above? And then you were given 4 sentences. As you can see, the correct answer is C. But let's take a look at those 4 sentences first. So many people, sentence A says, many people were poor and had little money during the Great Depression. Many people were poor and had little money during the Great Depression. Well, here, this sentence means many people were poor, as in they had little money, right? So they didn't have very many possessions or belongings or money. And here in the sentence we are considering, they had few maps and their navigating equipment was poor. Well, things other than people can't be poor. And I don't think this sentence is saying that the equipment they had to navigate by lacked money, right? It's more like the equipment they had to navigate by didn't work well, was ineffective, right? It didn't do the job the way they wanted it to. And that's not what this poor means in sentence A. So let's look at sentence B. You look like you don't feel well, you poor child, said the doctor. Well, here, the doctor's not calling the child poor, as in you have little money. He's not even saying you don't work well. What he's saying is, I take pity on you, right? Like, oh, you poor child, I feel bad for you. You look like you're sick, right? And it's a way of saying, it's an expression that means like, yeah, I pity you. I feel bad for you. I empathize with you. So that's not the same meaning as the equipment doesn't work well, right? Let's skip the right answer for now. Let's go to D. The sentence in D says, the desert is a region that is poor in the amount of rainfall it receives. Well, here we're talking about how little rainfall a desert receives. So in this case, poor means it doesn't get a lot of rain. And I don't think the poor in this sentence about this equipment not working well means it doesn't get a lot of something. So let's look at the right answer here. Answer C. It says, he had a difficult time completing the painting because his paintbrushes were poor. Well, here we have a sentence that's very similar in the way it's built up to the sentence that we have to consider. They both have tools, right? Navigators and their equipment, painters and the paintbrushes. And they both describe how the equipment doesn't work well. And here the navigating equipment was poor. It didn't work well. And here the artist's paintbrushes are poor. They don't work well, which is why he has a difficult time completing the painting. And that is why it's the right answer. Because in both sentences, the word poor describes something not working very well. The second question's correct answer, as you can see, was B. You were asked a question about another chunk of text and asked to pick the correct word. So let's read the directions, the text, and the question. The directions say, read the selection from the section, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. And here it is right here. I always want to go back to the text if I can. In this case, they give me the text, though. The most important thing was a reliable boat. From the beginning, European trading ships were small and clumsy. Still, they were generally sturdy enough to sail the open seas. By the 900s, sails improved and ships became easier to steer. Okay, so we're considering this paragraph. Let's see what the question is. What is the meaning of the word reliable as it is used in the selection above? Well, here's the selection. Let's look for the word reliable. Oh, there it is in the first sentence. Let's reread the first sentence now. The most important thing was a reliable boat. And it talks about how the boats weren't sturdy, and then they became sturdy, and then they got better and easier to steer with better sails. And so reliable means you can count on it, like it was trustworthy to go to sea. So we're looking for a word that's going to mean something like that: reliable or trustworthy. So determined. Well, if we're not sure if determined is the right answer, we could put it back in the sentence. The most important thing was a determined boat. Nope, that doesn't make any sense. Boats can't be determined. People can be determined. Let's try C, honest. The most important thing was an honest boat. Well, honesty is important in people, but boats can't be honest because they're not alive. They don't have a brain. Honorable, let's try that. The most important thing was an honorable boat. Well, I suppose you could honor a boat, I suppose, but an honorable boat, again, is a trait of a human, so that can't be it. Let's go to the right answer, dependable. The most important thing was a dependable boat. Now that makes sense, a boat you can depend upon to keep you safe at sea. And that's why B is the correct answer. Question 3 asks, read the section, The Evolution of Sailing Ships. Now it asks you to go back and reread all 2 paragraphs. And it says, which sentence from the section shows that explorers sometimes acted violently when arriving in new places? And they give you 4 sentences to choose from. A sentence that shows they sometimes acted violently when arriving in new places. So we know that A is the correct answer, but let's take a look at the choices. A says beginning around 1400, Spain conquered the Canary Islands and killed people there. Well, hey, that shows that people acted violently, right? You can't kill people without being violent. Let's just check the other answers. In 1418, Prince Henry the Navigator of Portugal began sending expeditions farther and farther down the west coast of Africa. Okay, sending expeditions, sending people to go explore doesn't sound very violent to me, so I don't know if that fits. By 1450 or so, the Portuguese searched Guinea in Africa and began settling on the Cape Verde Islands. Okay, so they reached a faraway place and began settling in new islands. That talks about settling when they reaching somewhere new, but it doesn't talk anything about being violent. How about D? In 1498, Portuguese Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa to India. Again, just about exploring. There's nothing violent there. The only sentence here, A, B, C, or D, that mentions anything violent is A, where they arrived in the Canary Islands and killed people. Yikes. So it has to be A, because A is the only sentence that talks about being violent. Now, we did not go back and read these 2 paragraphs, but if I was stuck, if I read these 4 sentences, considered my choices, and didn't know what to choose, I would go back and read both paragraphs and see if I could make sense of these sentences in context and then make my best choice. But because we didn't have to, I read my choices first carefully and considered each one. I didn't have to go back and reread. That would have been a great backup plan. And finally, last question. It says, read the section, Spain was once ruler of the seas. Select the paragraph that shows how some countries felt about Spain ruling the seas. And here, this question asks you to go back and read Spain was once ruler of the seas. And there are, in this section, Spain was once ruler of the seas, there are three paragraphs, right? I can't highlight, though. Why can't I highlight? There we go. 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, and then paragraph 3, which is the correct choice. So I had to read all 3 paragraphs in order to figure out the answer to the question. The question again says, select the paragraph that shows how some countries felt about Spain ruling the seas. Well, the first paragraph says by the early 1600s, ocean travel was flourishing. Spain was stealing the immense wealth of the New World. Portugal traded with India, the Spice Islands, and the New World colony, Brazil. Well, that talks about who's trading with who and how successful Spain is, but it doesn't talk about how other people feel about Spain. There's no other countries mentioned here about their reaction towards Spain, so it can't be that paragraph. All right, Spain became ruler of the seas. Large groups of Spanish ships regularly crossed the Atlantic. They carried cargo full of all these things like silver and jewels, cacao and tobacco and other commodities. Again, this is about Spain, yes. But is it about how other countries feel about Spain taking over and ruling the seas? No, there's nothing but other countries' reaction to Spain. So let's just double check that our last paragraph is the right paragraph. Other European countries were jealous of Spain. Well, there you go. This first sentence that talks about how other countries felt about Spain. They felt jealous of Spain. England decided to compete for peace of the New World, but they didn't have the experience in open water and little knowledge of the Atlantic. So even worse, the English government didn't want to pay for all that training. So this is the paragraph. Because of this sentence, other countries were jealous. That's how they felt about Spain. That has to be the correct choice, and it is. I hope this helps you think through, gives you a sense of how you should be taking these quizzes so that today in your work and your quiz, you can do just as well and work just as slowly and thoughtfully as we've worked here together.